So thank you everybody for joining this Thursday's rendition of our employee education programs. We have officially renamed that. Kara jumped in and with an assistance with Mark and our email announcement this morning for the new COO that's coming on board, and officially rebranded us and made that announcement that we are now the employee education program. So thank you everybody for joining us this week. We've got Christina and Piero who are going to talk to us all about the OvationTix product design process. So like I mentioned in Slack earlier, we often provide some feedbacks and suggestions on our products and the features and functionality, but then there's a lot more that goes into it in terms of the actual way that the product is designed and how the final product comes together for our clients. So Christina and Piero, I'm excited for you guys to show us your process, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Jenna, and thank you everyone for joining. So like she said, Piero and I are product designers on the OvationTix team, and thank you all for joining. Today we wanted to take you through what we do on the product design side for OvationTix, because it's a really important part of what makes our product team on OT so successful. So I'm just gonna, and everyone can see what I'm sharing, correct?
Yes.
Great. Here. So, like I was saying, what we do as a design team is so much more and fonts. For us, it's really about understanding our users and making sure that all the design for our product will best meet their needs. So, in today's presentation, high-level overview of user-centered design. So what is it? Why is it important? Our specific process. We'll take you through a deep dive case study of the reporting dashboard, which some of you may be familiar with, and then what we're looking forward to in terms of next steps. Centered design. For us, it means designing products, both how they work and feel, by a deep understanding of the users, the problem we're solving for them, and the context that they'll use the product in. It's an iterative and cyclical process where designs are continually tested with users to inform optimization so that the product is functional and enjoyable. And the reason designing is important is because we as product team members are not the users. So it's essential that we do research to empathize with our users and ensure that our design decisions are based on true needs and not assumptions. And that's really a key part of this is, as designers or product people, we all come into a project with our unconscious biases based on past experiences and just who we are as people. So making sure that those assumptions are not guiding what we do because we are not the end users is a really big part of this type of process. And it allows us to humanize technology because without that human factor, technology remains inaccessible. And while it's important for us to keep in mind things such as business requirements, technical, timing, and budget constraints, these secondary forms of research and other elements don't provide insight into our users' needs. And those users are really the ones with the decision-making power on whether they'll use our product or a competitor's. And this is a big evolution in the industry as a whole. I think it's been a switch from just focusing on business needs to really thinking about both the business and the user and how you can balance both of them. And then this is a stat we wanted to share to show that having a design-centric process doesn't just lead to better products, but it also has a clear business benefit. So NEA, which is one of the world's largest venture capital firms, did a design impact survey, and I think they do this every year. This one is from 2016. And you'll see here that it shows that design-centric companies have a 44% higher customer retention rate, as well as higher sales, higher customer engagement, and faster product cycles. And these are the reasons that our OT team has made research and design such an intrinsic part of our overall product process. So, and I think this is something that is important to help highlight because it's not just that it's good for the users and it'll lead to a better quality product, but even from a business standpoint, there are successful results that can, help sell in why this is an important way to work. So this wasn't always the case. OvationTix used to be much more engineer and system driven, but our team was able to make this transition to being more human-centered driven because all of our team members understand the importance of design and how it ultimately benefits the work that they do as well. So having their buy-in, as well as having Vera, the director of product management on our team, prioritize design and allot for it in the product roadmap and deadlines ensures that it's always a step in any feature or optimization that we're working on. And even though our team is pretty small in total, it really has made us more efficient and has not slowed us down. And we'll be taking you through that later in this presentation. But really the fact that we're doing this early on in the full product process means that there's less time needed later on during development to make last minute changes or address things that perhaps could have been solved for in an earlier design phase. So now I'll hand it off to Piero to take you through our specific process.
All right. Hey, guys. So I want to give you guys a little more insight into our design process here at OvationTix. We have 6 phases that we go through when we design product features. And these are user research, design, prototype, testing, handoff, and evaluation. So when we talk about user research, this is the phase where we empathize with the user and by understanding their pain points, needs, and behavior. And we do this by conducting usability tests and setting up user interviews. The next phase of the design process is design. And here is where we create potential solutions that can solve those user pain points and user needs. And we do this by setting up brainstorming sessions with the team, sketching ideas, and turning those rough sketches into high-fidelity mock-ups. Once we're done with the design phase, we go on to the prototyping phase. And here's where we create an interactive demo of a feature that later can be used for testing or to communicate functionality to our developers. Now, once we have all those interactive prototypes, it's time to put those in front of users to validate our designs. And again, we set up a lot of usability tests to gather all this feedback during the testing phase. And once our designs are validated and well tested, it's time to hand it off to our developers. And we do this by providing them with pixel-perfect mockups and special specifications regarding the UI, which is the user interface. And the last step of the design process is evaluation. So once the design is out in the wild, it's time to measure our success. And in this, we use tools like Pando that allows us to tag certain parts of the feature to measure engagement. Design team, it's important that we communicate effectively with other departments. But how do we do this? How does the OT design team work with other departments exactly? So we work closely with product managers to understand the user needs and prioritize features. We also work close with engineers who make our designs a reality, but also inform us of the technical limitations that we might have. We also work with sales so we can understand the new features that that could give. And of course, we work with customer success by letting them be the first adapters of our early prototypes. And product marketing. We also work with product marketing to communicate our upcoming product releases and updates. Now, what are the benefits that we get from using this design system? Well, it reduces development time because developers don't touch the design until it's well tested and validated. So they don't have to code something that is not going to be useful in the future. It also lowers the cost of support from client services and the call center. And it gives us a competitive advantage because we do research before we throw it in the wild. And we increase sales, less churn from current clients, and a strong word of mouth marketing. Now, I'm going to pass it to Christina. She's going to talk about more in detail how we use this process and one of our latest features.
Great. So like I said, the case study that we're taking you through today is for the reporting dashboard. So this is currently in limited release to some of our clients. So some of you may have already seen this. And the reason that we chose this feature to do a deep dive on is because it was one of the first OT projects that leveraged this full design process that Piero just walked you through. And the feedback we've received from our clients on this feature has been super positive, and it's really just tangible proof of how our team members working closely together during all of the stages, and doing research and design before development could lead to success. So our first step was doing user interviews with 7 clients to understand their pain points, current behavior, and their tasks and goals so that we could empathize with them as well as solidify the exact problem that we're solving for. So the users that we spoke to included a box office manager, database administrator, director of business affairs, finance director, marketing manager, general manager, and rentals manager. We wanted to speak with users in different roles because that is a true representation of the wide range of people that actually use OT. And 5 to 7 user interviews is usually the best range because it's enough to start identifying patterns and trends, but beyond that number often leads to too much repetition where you aren't learning anything new. So the way that user interviews work is that we reach out to our client services team here, and they can recommend which clients they think we should speak with based off of the problem that we're trying to solve for. And some best practices that we keep in mind are asking open-ended questions. So asking yes or no questions don't really lead to much insight because there isn't as much room for users to elaborate. We let the interviewee do the talking. So it's really easy to want to fill the silence when interviewees are thinking about their response, but it's really good to just sit in that silence and let them process their thoughts, as that usually leads to deeper answers. An important part is also capturing notes and writing what the interviews say verbatim, rather than just using what our interpretation is. And the reason for that is after the fact, we're able to analyze our findings to find key patterns and trends. And lastly, we note instances where the interviewee was excited, animated, angry, or expressive. And this helps provide insight because it's really not just about what our clients say, but how they say it. So if there are certain topics that they're talking about and they're very passionate or frustrated, that's a good way to know that it's important to them and something that we should focus on. So the types of questions that we asked for this reporting set of user interviews were, tell me about your responsibilities and goals, what reports are you running and how often, tell me about how you present the data from your reports, and walk us through the most difficult parts of your job. We then discuss all of the interview results as a team. So in this scenario, the key pain points we identified based on those user interviews are represented by these quotes. So not any one task is difficult. It's often that a lot of things are happening at once, and being multidisciplinary and changing my frame of thought on a daily basis is challenging. So many of our clients are nonprofit and they often have lean teams. So their members are responsible for many tasks that all have timely deadlines. So this was really common from what we heard when talking to all the different clients. They have a lot going on in a day and they need to get it all done quickly. So specifically when it comes to reporting, we found that the frequency that our users ran reports really varied. And it included daily sales reports, rap sheets at the end of every event, and annual reports for auditing purposes. And this helped us to understand how often our users would potentially use our solution. And our third key takeaway from our user interviews was how and why our users pull the reports that they do. So the majority of our users export numerous data points such as average ticket price, total ticket sales, comps, revenue, fees, etc., from all different parts of OvationTix to get the information they need. Once they export that into Excel or CSV files, they then have to manually manipulate all of this data so that they can do things such as membership analysis, budget updates, and monthly reconciliation. And as we saw in the last slide, our users need this info very frequently. So they're going through this exercise very often of going to multiple parts of our system and having to put it all together. And because they're manually doing this with the data, there is an increased chance of error. So based on all of our findings from this research, the problem statement that we formalized to solve for was box office managers need a way to easily and frequently view analytics so that their reporting process is less manual and tedious. And we chose to use box office managers as the main persona to keep in mind, as they often handle a lot of this day-to-day OT reporting. But that being said, our solution would work for our wide variety of client types. So after defining the challenge, we conducted a competitive analysis to understand the landscape and see how others in the market were serving up data and analytics to their users. So the first one that we looked at was Google Analytics. So they're not in the ticketing industry, and I wouldn't say that they're a competitor, but we wanted to take a look at them because they have one of the most well-known data dashboards. So our first key takeaway on what makes Google Analytics so successful is how they visually represent their data. Looking at just numbers or tables is definitely necessary for a more detailed view, but if your goal is to provide an easy-to-read snapshot, then using visuals is key. Next is making the complex simple. So data on its own can be complicated to understand and analyze. By pulling out key data points that we know the users will find important, means that they don't have to work as hard to understand it. And the last takeaway is that the Google Analytics dashboard provides a holistic view of everything that is going on for a user so that they don't have to check multiple places for it. And like I said, while they're not a competitor of ours, we thought a lot of these takeaways were really relevant for the problem that we're trying to solve for. The second competitor we looked at was Ticketmaster. So because they are in the ticketing industry, it was helpful to get an initial idea of the types of ticketing metrics that we should surface in our solution. So similar to Google Analytics, they also keep their content simple by revealing details only as needed. And it's clear that they have a strong organizing principle behind their visual layout. So breaking out their data into visually separate sections helps direct the user's eye. And then lastly, we took a look at Eventbrite. So their reporting dashboard has a responsive design, meaning that it's viewable on screens of different sizes. Knowing that our audience of box office managers are often on the go, this approach is something we wanted to take into consideration. And like the other two, Eventbrite highlights a few key areas of data so that they're telling a clear story and it's easy to read at first glance. In terms of our more direct competitors, such as Mendini and Spectrix, we did take an initial look at them, but didn't choose to do as much of a deep dive because we wouldn't say that their reporting was necessarily the highest key that we wanted to replicate. And at the time when this was being worked on, their reporting was on par to what we were already doing in OT. So while we definitely did not replicate these examples because we wanted to use our own user interview findings, it was helpful to see how others were solving for a similar challenge. And now Piero will take you through the rest of the case study.
Cool. So now that we went over the research phase, it's time to move on to the design phase. And here's where let's kick it off with the design phase with setting up a brainstorming session with the whole team. And we do this with the whole team because we want to bring everybody's perspective early in the process. So we start the session by stating the problem. And we make sure it's a problem to solve, not a solution to be vetted. Now, once we state the problem that we want to solve, we start sketching ideas. And here's where each member will have the chance to put their ideas on paper. And we try not to put a lot of detail into these sketches because we don't want to, just don't want to do that to stop coming up with crazy ideas. So once everybody's done sketching, we discuss these ideas that we came up with. And usually each team member will have a chance to talk about their sketches and explain how they came up with those ideas. So here I have some examples of some of the dashboards that we came up with. Vera has some comments, of course. We also had Christina. She had some sketches of some of the ideas that she had. And of course, our developers also had some ideas. Now, as product designers, we take all these rough sketches from brainstorming sessions and we put them into detail. But before we start mocking up these sketches, we need to first create a user flow. Now, a user flow is simply a set of steps or touch points that a user has to go through in order to accomplish a goal. And so let me give you a little example of how we would do this. So as you see here, this is a sketch of a brainstorming session, but how does the user actually get to this step? So this is where the user flow comes in. So we first start off from the very beginning. We start off where the user needs to sign in first to our OvationTix platform. And then once they're logged in, they'll be able to access My Reports. And after they click on My Reports, they'll be able to access the page, the My Reports page. So here's where they'll get a CTA, which is a call to action, where they could click on this and they'll be directed to the reporting dashboard. So this is just a little user flow, but it's just to give you a little idea of how we think through problems and how we take these user flows and we make them high fidelity mockups. Now, to make these ideas tangible, we use two different tools, and these are Envision and Sketch. Now, I'm gonna start off first with Sketch. Sketch is a user interface design tool that allows us to create high fidelity mockups based on these rough sketches here. So here I will have the sketch here, and I will come up with a high fidelity mockup of this sketch. Once we have all these mockups ready based on every screen in the user flow, it's time to bring them into Envision. And here's where we create. Envision is just a tool that allows us to create clickable prototypes that we could test with users later on. So here we create small hotspots that will direct the user from different screen to another screen. And then it's time to test it with users. So here's where we put our prototypes in front of users. And as Christina mentioned before, we ask open-ended questions so they could give us more feedback. And that way we gather the feedback that we want and we tweak our prototype based on that feedback. Now, the next step is to hand it off to our developers. And the reason why our developer handoff is so seamless is because we have a design system in place. Now, if you're not familiar with what a design system is, it's a collection of UI components that can be coded once and can be reusable across the platform or new features that we come up with. So this makes development twice as fast and also makes us faster designers. So I'm gonna give you an example of how we would take this mockup and we will split it into different components and then we communicate this to developers. So in this mockup, I would split it into three different parts. The stat bar, the graph, and of course the creator goal module here. So we will make these three different components and then we communicate with developers and we will tell them that these will have to be three different components and they will have to be coded differently. And of course, we support the dev team if they have any other questions about the components or any different UI elements that we might encounter. I'm gonna pass it to Christina. Yeah.
Great. So in terms of looking ahead, I think we have a very strong foundation and a very supportive team in terms of making research and design important, but there's always room for improvement. So some of the things that we're thinking about doing moving forward is firstly, increasing the use of data analytics to inform future prioritizations and design decisions. And I think Piero mentioned we already use Pendo. We recently started using Looker. So those are some tools that we can implement to make sure that we're not only talking to users, but also seeing their quantifiable actions. The second one is leveraging this new design system to improve all OT touchpoints. So we've started this across some of them, but there's definitely many pages within the admin side of OvationTix. So our goal is that all of those touchpoints will have a consistent look and feel as well as experience. And then lastly, we're always looking to continue exploring research methodologies and tools, such as in-person ethnography. So there really is no limit to what we can do to try to reach our users, and we are continually thinking about how we can improve upon that. And then lastly, just a shout out to our squad, because they're super supportive, and we really appreciate that they understand the importance of design. And then lastly, before we get into any questions, we just wanted to show you a demo video that was put together for this reporting dashboard so that you can take a look at it in action. So let me just share that. right, great. So that's it from our end.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to open it up to questions, and I think I'm actually going to start. I've got a question for you guys. When you bring in clients, and you said you do the client interviews, how do you determine which clients are brought in for interviews? And are you selecting clients from a wide variety of types of clients? So like large ones, small ones, performing arts, museums, etc. How do you go about that process?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jenna. So we work really closely with our client services team here, and they've been very supportive in that step. So we usually tell our client services team what the problem is that we're solving for. So, for example, we want to work on a reporting dashboard, or something that we're currently working on is general ledger codes. So we'll reach out to them and tell them that the problem that we're solving for, and they're well-informed suggestion of who to reach out for. So it really will depend on, the questions that we're asking, who they will recommend.
Awesome. And then that video that you just showed us at the end, is that something that gets pushed out to all of the clients, like in the newsletter, or how does that get kind of pushed out and promoted when you've got a snazzy new feature like that? Because I'm assuming you don't do videos like that for every new feature that gets implemented.
No, yeah, of course. We do it for big releases, and we make sure that product marketing gives it a look and gives it a thumbs up before we release it to everybody.
Yeah, I love that stuff. Whenever you guys have that, send it along, and I will be sure to include it in our communications.
Cool.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from the group? Awesome. Well, thank you, Christina and Piero. It was great to learn so much more about the product and about how the process kind of continues. Like I said, we hear a lot about the functionality side of things, and we've had a couple presenters here for these Thursday morning sessions to talk about the functionality and how that happens. So it's really great to see how the look and feel all comes together and really gives us the product that our clients see and love. So thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thank you everybody for stopping by and checking this out.
Great. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.